Here.
Mr. Haas.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Wright. Mr. Meyer.
Here.
Mr. Mitchell. Ms. Shafsma.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Okay, so
Expecting more based on email?
Terry said he would be late if he makes it, and Jonathan said he would be here.
well, they can catch up with us when we get here. Okay, approval of the minutes. So everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes, I hope, before they came. Do we have any changes?
Yes, I do. I did not approve the minutes. I mean, you have me approving it and you have me abstain it, and I abstained because I was absent in June and did not attend that.
I'm sorry, explain that again.
Okay, under number 3, where the minute approval of minutes, you had that I voted yes to approve them, and I did not. I abstained because I wasn't here with the
Have her
previous
down
meeting.
twice.
Sorry about that.
Any other changes?
Wasn't anything major.
So do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move, approve it with a correction.
I second it.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those abstained? Those saying no? Okay, very good. Do we have any additions to the, or changes to the agenda?
Nope.
And sir, who do we have visiting with us this evening?
I'm Don Wright. I'm the treasurer of the Barclay Hills Neighborhood Association. I appeared before you, a month and a half ago or so, about the intersection of Barclay Hills and now Mountain View and Malala, and the confusing dance that cars and pedestrians have to do at that intersection.
Okie dokie. And I think that's on our agenda tonight, too. What great timing. Okay, so from there, we will go right to our first agenda item, which I believe is Pete from Planning.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to go over this presentation that we've been giving to the neighborhood associations. My name's Pete Walter. I'm a planner in the Community Development Department. The Planning Department issues permits for street tree removal and replacement throughout the city for the public right-of-way areas. And what we've been doing is working closely with the Public Works Department and with whoever the abutting landowner is whenever there is sidewalk damage caused by a tree to assure that when a sidewalk repair takes place through Public Works, the tree is also replaced according to the street tree code that we have in Chapter 12 of the Municipal Code. So this is a brief presentation that we've been giving to the neighborhood associations, and it's been tailored to the neighborhood associations because at the end of the presentation we've been showing the results of the 2010 sidewalk survey that John Lewis's department has done. And in a lot of those cases, some of the panel raised, excuse me, that you see is caused by tree roots, and there's historical reasons why this is occurring and why it occurs seemingly all at the same time in certain subdivisions as well. So it's not a popular process to be going through if you're a budding landowner because it's costly to repair the sidewalk, and a lot of landowners don't want to be forced to replace a tree when they know it's going to create a problem again in the future because of a very narrow planter strip. So the focus of our presentation has really been on why there is a street tree code and what the benefits of street trees are. And then we also talk about the process for permitting. The presentation typically takes me about, 3/4 of an hour, but I will just go through this briefly, and then if you have any questions for me afterwards, I'd be happy to answer them. We've given this presentation to 3 neighborhood associations so far. The first slide, we talk about how our city's tree canopy cover compares to other cities in the metropolitan area. We are at about 26% tree canopy, and that's taking into account all of the built area, roads, parking lots, buildings as well. And that's based on aerial photography and a study that was done by the Audubon Society and Metro. Lake Oswego has a higher canopy cover, and Portland has a higher canopy cover than we do. And we don't really have an urban forest management plan for the city, so we don't have a goal for what canopy cover should be. And the question comes up: what is healthy urban forest canopy, and where? And I think, generally speaking, around 30 to 40% for urban areas is considered healthy. But it really depends on the health of that forest and how and what benefit it is, giving your community. So we talk about the benefits of street trees. Yes.
Going back to the 26% for Oregon City, 2007 figures versus the 2009 figures on
Right. It should be 2009. That's a mistake.
Oh, the 2007
Yeah.
should be 2009.
Yeah, sorry. Good catch. I will correct that.
Yeah. I just didn't know if I was going to wonder what the growth rate was, so maybe we're at 32%.
No, they didn't do a study in 2007. It is a 2009 study. We have aerial photography that goes back to 10 years. So hypothetically, we could, estimate how far we've come in 10 years or whether it's declined even. But we haven't done that study yet. It would be something for a future study. Thanks. So we talk about the benefits of street trees, particularly carbon storage and uptake, energy conservation, water quality, wildlife habitat, real estate values, and community health benefits, particularly with regard to how trees shade the street and cool water that flows into the stormwater system and ultimately into our streams. Very important benefit as far as providing making oxygen available in the Clackamas and Willamette rivers, to the extent that we can break the force of rainfall falling onto the ground as well. That has benefits in terms of erosion control, etc. Property values have been demonstrated in various studies. Portland did a study that showed that street trees have a benefit of $1.1 billion, translating to $45 million annually. And the study is very detailed, but basically they looked at a lot of tree neighborhoods on the southeast side of Portland. And they also looked at canopy cover, and they found that within 100 feet of a tree that has a canopy cover of about 190 square feet, they saw an increase in the sale of that home equivalent to about $7,000 during the height of the real estate boom. There's been similar resale studies been done in Lake Oswego and in building and trade magazines that show that mature trees have a clear benefit to property values.
So if they were to sell the trees, that would generate $1.1 billion.
Well, what they've done is it's called no, that's not the price of selling the tree. It's the benefit that accrues to the property through the presence of the tree within 100 feet of the property, and it's done through what's called a hedonic economic study model. And I've got a copy of it. And there's a cost associated with maintaining the trees as well, and they took that into account, and that cost is primarily borne by the adjacent landowners, and as it is in Oregon City as well. Briefly, we have had a street tree code in effect since 1998. We've had an adopted street tree list since 2001. And that street tree list needs to be updated. And we're hoping that when our Natural Resource Committee comes back up and running in November, one of their first tasks can be to help us update our street tree list. The list is important because it's organized according to planter strip width, so that you plant the right size tree and the right species of tree in the right place, and you don't create problems with tree roots in the future, and allow for the proper growth of trees. Prior to 1998, we typically approved subdivisions with fairly narrow planter strips, as narrow as 3 feet or less. In some cases, they're 2.5 feet. And those are the planter strips that we primarily see some of these problems with roots, raising panels, causing cracking, and those kinds of things. Associated with that problem are the species of trees that were planted. In some cases, we have Norway maples, where the root systems follow the ground surface and follow water lines and create all kinds of problems there. And what neighbors have told us is that when they've dug down in certain cases, they found that the trees have construction debris underneath them, so the planting of the tree was not done correctly. There wasn't a sufficient root ball or a hole dug in the first place, and in the backfill of that hole may not have been done appropriately. So that's something that we've been improving as we've been moving forward. This slide shows who is responsible for maintenance of the right-of-way. The Public Works Department maintains the pavement from the curb face in. The abutting property owner is responsible for maintenance of the area between the back of the sidewalk and the curb. This is the area where, you know, they get to use that area, and it's ostensibly part of their property, and they can use that, but they have to maintain it. But it is in the right-of-way. And subsequently, the street trees are also maintained by the property owner. So we have a policy in place that allows an owner to remove and replace a street tree when there's a hazard in place, and there's several definitions of a hazard. There's a tripping hazard, which is a lip in a sidewalk that is more than 1/2 inch. And in that case, the tree is, if it's the tree that's causing the problem, we will approve its removal and replacement. And then if the tree itself is dropping limbs or in danger of falling into the right-of-way or on a private property or on any kind of target that cannot be moved, that is considered an imminent hazard and can be removed and replaced after the tree's been cleared away. And the policy is that the replacement tree has to be at least 1.5 inches in diameter when it's planted. There's clearance distances specified in the code for to allow for proper tree growth. These are 15 feet from streetlights, 5 feet from fire hydrants, 20 feet from a street intersection, 5 feet at mature height below a power line. And then in terms of pruning heights, you're supposed to maintain 7-foot clearance above a sidewalk and 10-foot clearance above the street. And in some situations, these clearances can't be observed, or, you know, and there are certainly plenty of pre-existing situations in the city that don't meet these standards now. And, you know, we have to be dealing with these situations as they come up. So there are 2 permits involved if you have a sidewalk that is cracked and needs to be replaced and that damage is caused by a tree. The sidewalk repair is through the Public Works Department. They have a reduced fee right-of-way permit. The owner would complete the repair, and the Public Works Inspector will do a visit before and after the repair. And in some cases, he makes more than 2 trips to make sure that everything's done right. And those repairs need to meet minimum Public Works and Americans with Disabilities Act standards. And then the tree permit is through our department, and we have a no-fee tree permit. It's either based on an accepted street tree list or based on an arborist recommendation for the replacement tree. And we do an inspection after the tree is planted. We can do a lot of the initial permitting without actually going out to the site. We just rely on the owner to tell us where they're going to plant it. We do approve alternatives to tree removal if it is going to be safe after the repair is done. There are several new technologies in place that can allow for proper pedestrian and safe passage. These include pervious pavers, rubber sidewalks that flex, narrower sidewalks as long as they meet a minimum ADA clearance width of 36 inches or 3 feet. And in some cases, the tree you can cut the root of the tree and place a panel back down. The tree might not survive if that root is a structural root, but we rely on an arborist recommendation in that case. And if it's possible to just saw cut a part of the panel out or shave it down, we can approve that in certain cases if it's going to save the tree and the owner is amenable to that. A lot of times the owner just wants to replace the entire thing and plant a new tree, and that's the majority of the situations that we see. We have some proper tree care suggestions here for owners. This is a very short list. It basically says that don't overwater and fertilize your trees when they are starting out. Prune branches properly. We ask people not to top their trees as well because that can create weakness in the crown of the tree and that sort of thing. And we always recommend the use of a certified arborist if they need a professional. So now we're going to switch gears and present a little bit of the results of the survey project from 2010. And so the Public Works had a crew of interns that surveyed current conditions of all sidewalks in Oregon City for ADA compliance. They rated sidewalks as excellent, above average, average, below average, and poor based on these 4 criteria. Sidewalk width, presence of raised panels, cracking, and maximum slope. And an excellent rating would be given to a sidewalk segment, meaning a section between 2 intersections. That entire section would be considered a segment if it met all of the above categories. For example, if you've got a width greater than or equal to 3 feet, no raised panels, no cracking, and a maximum slope that is less than or equal to 2%. Pretty hard to find a section like that in Oregon City. But there are some. I don't have a map here because it's a big map, and we can probably get that information to you. And then if you have a rating of poor, it basically means that a handicapped pedestrian could not negotiate that sidewalk safely. This is a breakdown of some of that sidewalk analysis. They're showing that approximately, let's see, I want to say about 46% of the sidewalks in the city have a rating of excellent and above average. About 26% is average. Poor and below average, you're looking at about 20, 23, 24%.
Where are you seeing that?
I'm just correlating that bottom section on the sidewalk segment rating on the bottom.
Got it.
So, we've got, let's see, 138 miles of sidewalks, and I think the number of setback sidewalks is about half of the total sidewalk segment. So setback sidewalks would be ones with planter strips. Yeah. And what this survey project did not really look at was whether a crack or a lifting panel is caused by a street tree, but if there were clearances due to overhanging branches that didn't meet ADA, they did monitor that sort of thing. Here's a little more information about sidewalk cracking, sidewalk obstructions that are less than 36 inches, vertical obstructions where there is less than 8-foot clearance, and raised panels. So they measured they counted a total of 2,231 raised panels. And then this is a very detailed slide that has to do with the ramps at the corners, which is not usually what we deal with when we're talking about street trees. I've just included this slide for your information, and if you wanted to talk about this more, I'd ask John to elaborate on the slide because I'm not super familiar with it. They also looked at the texture of the ramp material and the color of the ramps, and whether or not the ramps themselves had cracking. So that's a very brief overview of the presentation. If you have any suggestions as how to improve it, I'd be welcome those. The street tree code that we have in place is a very standard municipal street tree code in that the abutting property owner is responsible for that tree and also for the sidewalk repairs. In some cities, I think Lake Oswego might be an example, but they charge a utility fee to the owner to take care of certain types of repairs. And in that case, they're able to get economies of scale because they will do them on a larger scale. So what some property owners have suggested to the city is that the city get together and suggest a list of contractors who are familiar with our standards and who we know has done this kind of work and can do them on a larger scale basis. So we're still working on that. But the way it works right now, it's an individual permit by permit process. And some of it is driven by a lot of it is driven by code enforcement, which is it's a completely reactive process. We don't drive around looking for infractions. We only respond to complaints. And so if there is a complaint, it's logged through the code enforcement department, it goes to Public Works, and then it goes to planning if there's a street tree involved as well. So you'll see a lot of situations where a tree has not yet been replaced, or and it's probably either hasn't been reported yet, or it's going through the code enforcement process. So there's definitely some room for being more responsive there. I think hopefully with this new system that we've got in place that they've called the OC Request program, which is a smartphone application that will allow an owner to just take a picture of a coded issue, and it will automatically upload it to the city website now, and it goes immediately to the responsible department. We're hoping that helps us kind of catch up with this backlog of enforcement issues. And in many cases, I talk to owners who are being proactive and are not waiting for the sidewalk damage to occur. They're saying, well, I can see that this root is about to cause this panel lift of more than half an inch, and I want to take care of it now rather than later. So in those cases, we can go out to the site and look if there's an issue, and approve a replacement tree in that situation. Our code does require a higher number of replacement trees if there's no apparent hazard. So it's only when there's a code enforcement or a hazard that it's a one-for-one tree replacement, because you might have a 12-inch tree and then you have to replace a 1.5-inch caliper tree. You lose all that canopy for several years. So that's a concern. But we found that is the only fair way to enforce this code based on some of the decisions that the city has made since 1980, when we were approving subdivisions with very narrow side planter strips.
I have a question. You said that you're hoping to get an updated tree list this fall. And so people that are replacing trees now are replacing them off a list.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I understand this, but they don't have to replace them off the list if
Actually, what we do is we have our list, which is somewhat out of date, but we also allow a person to select a tree off of Portland's list, Milwaukee's list, Gladstone's list, which are also organized by Planter Strip, and those are acceptable and a little more up to date. So there are more hybrids of trees, more varieties of trees which are appropriate. You know, it's sort of a moving target.
So they're not being required to replace a tree with another tree that's going to do the same thing?
Right, no, not at all. Yeah, no. No, the idea is you get the right tree in the right place the second time around. You know, hopefully you won't have to do it a third time, but, you know, eventually a tree's going to grow, but the idea is that if you plant a dogwood, for example, in a 2.5-foot strip, you're not going to have a problem if you planted let's say a hornbeam or some other really big species of tree in a 2.5-foot strip. You can expect a problem in a very short time. As short as 6 to 8 years is what we're seeing, especially if it's being fertilized and watered. Yeah.
But the trees that are on your list now are okay to plant.
Yes, they are. Yes. Thank you.
Can we get a copy of the presentation?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm. Yeah.
I take it. Yeah, go ahead.
So some of the raw data on the inventory was provided, I'm going to say about 9 months ago to the committee, just as though it was raw data and saying, look, we hadn't really gone through this too much. So we've made some progress in that we've kind of started looking a little bit more at this, trying to present it to neighborhoods because, not just because we did the inventory, but because this has been a topic before the City Commission in a few meetings, usually by way of neighborhoods who have been notified that they need to remove trees. Right? So I think the city is attentive to those concerns, and we wanted to bring it to you because not necessarily it's pedestrian transportation, I suppose, but it's just another group to showcase kind of some of the policies that the city has for now and present some of the data. We've been doing it, while we did citywide data here, we've been asking our GIS people to present it specific to the neighborhood, so each neighborhood gets its own map and gets its own data set, so it's not citywide data. And it looks like in this presentation we've provided a little bit more in terms of the details about how we did that survey. So the feedback, though, that we've been hearing has been positive. You know, often at these neighborhood meetings, they're not there because this is a hot ticket item for them, but in some cases it is. And what we're hearing from a lot of people is that they're appreciative of the city's thoughts on value of trees, the values the trees provide for the community. So I wasn't sure we were going to see that, but we're here that we have heard a fair amount from the neighborhood meetings that we've been to. And we've been to Caulfield, Barkley Hills, and
Vista. Yeah.
Tower Vista.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. We've been to those three. We're going to present this to the CIC as well, and South End is next on the list. So some of the things that have come up at the meetings have been questions about whether or not the mapping is, somebody will live on there and they go, wow, I didn't think my sidewalk looked that bad, or maybe they thought it looked worse. We've heard some of that kind of feedback that we need to go through and troubleshoot. Probably because I forgot to press it. Sorry. So we are getting that kind of feedback. The other thing that we're doing is we're not providing solutions about funding, but we have talked a little bit about the street utility fee and how there are some options there that make some sense, at least for partial city funding. If as a collectively as a city, that was the decision for how we would go. But we haven't provided lots of specifics about a citywide tree or sidewalk replacement program. We're still kind of leaving that as a responsibility for the property owner. So, I think people understand that if whether it be these kind of sidewalk problems or sidewalk connectivity, they're not inexpensive solutions. So I think we've heard, you don't always get a resounding, vote of approval there, but I think the head nodding and just kind of the reaction that we get from the neighborhoods has been favorable. So.
Excellent. I'm glad you're going out to South End because that came up at one of their meetings a few months ago.
Yeah.
They've
Yeah,
got
it's a
some
big
issues
concern.
out there in some of those subdivisions that were built around that time frame.
Right, because I know the subdivision, I live in Tower Vista, and, our neighborhood has started the replacement. But I guess my question is, what about the 2 green spaces that are in our neighborhood? If those trees start raising the sidewalks, whose responsibility is it then?
If it's a city parcel, it's the city.
Is it?
If
Okay.
it's a neighborhood association, then it's a neighborhood association.
Okay.
I'd have to look at the particular piece. Our mapping clearly shows who the owner of the parcel is.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Okay, transportation studies under contract.
So there's several listed here, and we put them on the agenda just because we didn't want to lose track of them. But all of these intersections, other than the fact that I can tell you, we've hired Kittleson and Associates and DKS and Associates. They're both transportation engineering firms that we work with pretty regularly to evaluate some of these intersections, Barkley Hills and Malala Avenue, and the item B, Malala Avenue. That's the same area, and we're using Kittleson and Associates to do the evaluation on that. I know they did a draft report on that. We've reviewed that, gave them some comments, as well as there's a letter in your packet from a property owner, Edith Reiser, who had some other concerns that we asked them to take a look at. So before we present solutions, we'd like the consultant to do, in all these cases, do a complete evaluation and report before we kind of say what we're going to do to fix it. So this is a little lesson learned from what we had at South End and the corner at South End. I can't remember the cross street there, but
That's South End and Warner Barrett.
no, further down. I was thinking of the, but that's another good example. Trying to get that third-party engineering professional opinion before we go making changes. So that's true for this one. Holcomb Boulevard, of course, is associated with the vehicle accident that was there a couple of weeks ago, and Dutch Brothers has been a long time issue, and as we're working through that project there, we're asking them to look at that. And Partlow at South End is another one that's come out. That's the one intersection that DKS is looking at in conjunction with our transportation system plan. Although I hope to see something sooner than the TSP. But so all of those are under consultant review, and but we've yet to receive a final or a draft final report on any of those intersections. So.
Okay. So, Mr. Wright, did you have a specific question?
No, I'm just here to poke the bear,
Okay.
see how it's going.
It's under review.
It's under review, that's good. I just have to report back to my group. And it's under review.
Thanks, Pete.
Person I used to talk to every day when I was in the reporting business, who would say, not knowing the full ramifications of the situation, I hate to expostulate on the matter, which I think would be the same, right?
Right. Yeah. On the Barkley Hills, there's a couple of, I know it might be you and one other that you've been communicating with, providing updates regularly.
I have been, we've been corresponding by email, and I've been trying to keep them up to date.
You're doing good.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other day, though, just as an aside, I walked on Hilda and was noticing the cars that park on the north side of Hilda, just past the Albany place. And it looked awfully narrow, and there wasn't any traffic coming then, so I stepped it off with my number 12s. And there's room for one car to get around that curve right by the apartment complex with the cars parked on the curve. So Hilda is not a very good solution to the Barclay Hills and Mountain View solution, if you're thinking of that. I saw that in some little note back here, so boy, that's a tough one there.
Yeah, I remember dealing with that particular intersection, or not the intersection, but the corner, when they rebuilt a couple of homes there, from my recollection. And then when we did the Malala, this is a little before my time, but when we did the Malala Avenue improvements, that sidewalk, there's a sidewalk piece that comes down to at least a couple of the homes there, and there
It's
was
the one that has the traffic signs right in the middle of the sidewalk that you have to go around.
yeah.
There's no room on
There's no room, right? There's no room there. So trying to accommodate a little bit of on-street parking, the curve itself, yeah, it's narrow. It's real narrow. The travel lanes through there.
If the one guy has a semi over the road, semi truck that he parks in his.
Well, if that's the case, we dealt with that issue.
He's not on the street.
Last-
He's pulled off, but I mean, everything else that was on the sidewalk or on the driveway has to come out on the streets. It has to.
Yeah. Well, I'll look at that because we established last month that commercial vehicles on private property are illegal. So,
Back them out.
no,
That's a problem.
yeah, it is. It can be in certain areas. It can be problematic. So,
I had a question. I didn't. On the way down today, I took a right on Barclay and then went up to Hilda or to Alden. Is it? And then to
Yeah,
Hilda.
that's by the cemetery. there.
Yeah, and that actually worked real well. And I thought, well, that might be an alternative. But then I looked on the map, the Google map, and there's Hood and Irving. Is that connective? Is that a
Well,
way to?
there's Mount Irving is the one that goes over to the. Is that the one that goes over to the dental center and all that? Is that goes back?
If you're heading out toward Malala on Barclay, you would take a right on Irving and then go to, I think it's Hood, and then Hood would go out to Malala.
Well, but
It's-
it's one way coming
Right.
in from Malala. You
Okay,
can't go back
yeah, I
out.
didn't drive it, so I didn't know.
So
Yeah.
there's a nice bunch of grapes you can have right there, but you can't drive it.
Got it. Okay. One other question. Also, the map. You know how these maps?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
didn't have a street name on it, but in back of the grocery outlet, it shows a street connecting to Mountain View Lane, but there was no name on it. So I thought, well, maybe there isn't actually a road there. I didn't have time to
There
drive.
is.
no, there's a park.
There's a park.
This is
The-
before the park, between grocery outlet and the park.
There's no through street.
I
There's
didn't
a
think so,
there's a
yeah.
driveway that we use, and then the apartment complex has a driveway, but there's no
No.
public right of way.
Yeah.
The joint parking lot of the gas station and the, as Edith Reiser calls it, the can outlet. but
Yeah.
it's a grocery outlet. And people use that a lot, as a street sort of kind of.
Okay.
Very complex.
Crowded little area.
Anyhow, keep working, folks. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so we ready to move on to McLaughlin Boulevard timing signals?
Absolutely.
Can't take that screen anymore.
Is that about the letter that was included about the 20 minutes to get down 99E?
Yes.
And I guess the other, we've heard, I would say, a fair amount about McLaughlin, and just the need to kind of continue to monitor that situation. Also, 213 and Glen Oak Road, we've spent a lot of time responding to property owners concerned about the traffic delays out there. And some of it's been city time, a lot of it's been ODOT staff time, and I think ODOT has done a good job of keeping an eye on those intersections and doing what they can with the facilities that they have, but they've done an outstanding job responding to these emails. And so for whatever that's worth, it feels like they're doing the best they can. On 99E, I just haven't noticed that kind of delay, except when the other day when we had the problems with 213 and 205, obviously everything was pretty bottlenecked up. But at that hour, I've driven that stretch at 99E, and I really didn't see the kind of delays that were represented in this email. But it's not to say there haven't been days when it's been like that. So I think on those days, though, it wasn't necessarily a result of signal timing.
Well, I know when I come through there about 5:15 in the evening, that lane is bumper to bumper the entire length of Oregon City. How long it's really taking a particular car to get through there, but there's no space.
Yeah, in the morning it's bad.
So,
And at night it is. I know when I've gone to Southwest Portland, like at 4:30 in the afternoon, it takes me longer. I mean, because you got to go all the way down to get across the bridge to get to Lake Oswego,
I think that's just the nature of what
It
we're
is
going to
the
have to
nature.
live with.
That's basically the bridge
Right,
closure.
right, the bridge closure.
Well, the bridge closure and the 213, and then you got 10th Street closed. We've got a lot of stuff going on down there.
So just be patient.
Yeah.
But I think, if they do have accidents like on 205 or I-5, then everybody heads to 99E,
Yep.
which adds traffic.
One other thing I meant to mention during the item B, the transportation studies, Ron, I just wanted to let you know, because I've heard a couple of things from you over the few months about Lynn and concerns for Lynn between 5th really and I suppose the top of the hill, the curved section. So we've
Go ahead.
we've decided internally to take a kind of a comprehensive look at signage and striping, looking to see what kind of things we can do, maybe without a full-blown engineering study, but just some things that we can implement with some of the more reflective signage, consistent size signage, maybe reflectorized buttons down the middle of that boulevard. So that's something we're doing, internally. And I think the last email I saw had something to do with a skateboarder. And so I'm not sure that was necessarily related to our signage or our striping, but
No.
I thought that's at least the second thing. I know there was a speed sign issue, and then of course we dealt with speeding, the speed of Lynn Avenue a few months back, and so it just seemed like a good corridor that we pretty much took care of Malala and a lot of the kind of visual pollution along Malala a few years back. I think South End's kind of been, at least our section of South End has kind of been improved. The school zones, we've been able to tighten those up a lot. So Lynn is the next one on our list. So wintertime will be a good time to kind of focus on that. So I wanted to let you know that.
That one corner between Pearl and 4th, 5th, 4th, I don't know what it is, when it goes right up the hill as soon as you enter Lynn. That has kind of been a bad thing for a long time because people have a tendency to cut the corner whether it's striped or not, but there's hardly any room for people coming down. And I think, I'm just thinking, I'm assuming this guy was on a skateboard coming down the hill there, and a young girl was driving a Honda, about a 95, and her window was smashed in because he ended up in her window, just totally clear across the whole window. And I don't know if bicycle riders go up that thing and people cut the corners or go around it, trucks and, just happen to be itching over another side of that stripe. That's brand new stripe now. But it's just a dangerous caution or something and then I don't know what you do about kids riding skateboards down that thing. And then if you had over here and I can't even think of the road, but over here behind the shopping center, by the
Main
lake,
Street Extension.
by the Coke, yeah, they got the little bumpity bumps, and if they could put it around that corner so people realize that they're maybe wake them up, but then you might get a guy in a bicycle or a skateboarder having problems hitting those, or the round things like they have in Glen Oak. But then you got another problem. People just go over them. I think the one in Glen Oak is more of a contest for somebody to go through fast, especially our younger folks. See if they can go across them fast. But anyway, other than that, it's just a bad situation. because this guy, he was laying there and he was looking up at the sky with his eyes open, but I think he must have came out of it. My granddaughter was ahead of me, and she said he was breathing, so things were looking a little bit good there. But,
Did you hear what?
huh?
Did you hear that that was? It was a suicide attempt. It was non-traffic related,
Oh, is that right?
That's the police department said it was. There's no traffic control problems at all. It was. It's closed. It's a closed issue.
Somebody jumped off the edge of that concrete?
I don't know. They said it was attempted suicide.
Yeah. It's too bad.
I ride my bike up that hill there, and I've had only one time where I felt like they kind of cut the corner there, and I would like to put a rope tow on that section for.
I've ridden it too.
That just kicks your fancy.
It's the best. It's the easiest route to get up out of
It
all the
is.
routes. But yeah, it's tight. We also had a property owner correctly submit a concern about the arborvitae, and there's the wall in that corner as well. So and the arborvitae is up pretty high, but it kind of comes down, and it was overgrown enough to where it was really reaching out into that bike lane. So
It's really a narrow corner, I think, the
It
bike
is.
lane or pedestrian lane, or whatever you want to call it.
yeah.
But anyway.
Okay, ready to move on? Election of officers, and what we need to do tonight is actually nominate new officers. So we will take nominations for the position of chair. You can't nominate Mary, she's done it twice.
I would like to nominate Blaine.
Do we have any other nominations? You'll hold elections next month. Did you accept the position?
Sure.
Okay. You're welcome. Okay, going once, going twice. Any other nominations?
I move that nominations closed.
Second it?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Okie dokie.
Is there a discussion on pay grade?
We could have one if you want.
You
You
can
might not do
You can
well.
have 100%
25%.
increase over my pay. Yeah. And vice chair. We need a vice chair, guys. So any nominations? This really isn't a difficult job. What you're doing is basically running this meeting. So if you read the packet and you come to the meetings, that's what's critical.
I nominate Betty.
And Betty, would you accept that position?
Yes, I will.
Are there any other nominations? Going once, going twice? Okay, at this point, we have nominated Blaine for chair and Betty for vice chair, and we'll see if anybody else has an interest next week after you think about it. And we will elect officers. Yes, ma'am.
Just a point of order here. Blaine, your term expires the end of this year, so it's safe to assume you've reapplied?
I did. Yeah. I'm working that out with the chamber.
Oh, okay.
It's an appointment from the chamber. so.
You're correct.
Right.
Okay.
Good point of order. Okay, construction projects. And of course, we got updates in our packet on the construction projects. And I know that I received an email today about the night work that's going to start on the 213 project.
Has started.
It has started.
And
Well, I
that-
guess it is the,
That's simply what I gave you was a press release and an email. They're both about jug handle nighttime construction work.
okay, so if there are there any questions about the construction updates?
When are they going to when are they actually going to close it and put the bridge in place?
They don't necessarily have a date picked, but they're shooting for March of 2012. And
I think I want to be out of town.
the contractor's required to give us 90 days. Spring break has been mentioned, but I don't think we can hold the contractor to that. But they might be motivated to do that as well. So again, they got to give us 90 days notice, and there will be significant amount of public information that'll come along with that. So
In fact, I wanted to put something in the Trail News because it's going to be issued. I think it's going to be issued in November, and they said it's not even time to put it in there. So we do that quarterly. So we're at least 4 months out.
Visited the Park Place Neighborhood Association last night, and they had the fella, his name escapes me, but he's the
Jason Kelly,
yes.
Jason Kelly from OBEC.
Yes. And he said that, and also Laura was there, and they said that they are going to do just this huge media blitz, I think all media channels, and basically we had a laugh on it, but they said, we're just going to tell people basically get out of town. It's going to be a 4-day shutdown. So also we had a complaint from someone who a resident in Park Place there, and they said the pile driving, can you move that to any other, like it's in the middle of the night, but basically said that by the time they get there, because there's a regulation that says you can't start until after 8 o'clock, by the time they get the cones set up and get the cranes and all the equipment in there, it's and it takes about 4 or 5 hours, I guess. So, but they're pounding those things down in the middle of the night, and I know they have those covers over them, but he said it just kept him awake all night. So, and he basically said there's not really anything we can do, but just to make you aware that that's an issue.
I guess maybe we're relying on you as TAC members to kind of also help get the word out that we know what's going on, we know it's inconveniencing people, but it's this week and hopefully next week, 4 days this week, 4 days next week, and then hopefully they'll be done. I think that they have to do it at nighttime. They can't have any lane closures on 213, and so if you hear anybody complain, I know that. I don't know if people are hearing it at the top of the hill, but our project manager lives in West Lynn, and she said it did travel down the Willamette River corridor, and she did hear it in the middle of the morning. And, she said, oh my gosh, I know what that is. And, she heard a few pounds, and then they're able to, I think she said that they do 5 compressions, and then they're able to put the cloth around it and shield the noise a little better. But she heard it, so I know it has to bother Park Place, and we know it's bothering Gladstone.
right.
It's not so much that, they put earmuffs on and things like that, and earplugs and all of that, but it's the vibration. It actually vibrates they can feel the vibration, so it's, but I don't know what you could do about it.
We appreciate your patience, and I did hear that meeting, that most people were really nice about it.
They were.
Our approach is minimize, get it done quickly. This is going to have an effect on people, but there would also be effects if they were even allowed to do it during the day, and we just know those effects would be huge too. So trying to live with the lesser of two evils, I think, at this point. I'm not overly prepared, but I basically no change on most of these items. They're still proceeding as on schedule. I think the Main Street and 10th is actually ahead of schedule. They're going to open up Singer Hill. I heard Tuesday, but I heard something even sounded like even better today, that maybe they'd be done by the end of this week.
It's supposed to be open Friday. We don't know what time, but it's supposed to be reopened on Friday.
So there'll still be construction in the intersection, but it won't require closure of Singer Hill, or Main Street. So that's all good news.
Excellent.
Yeah, perfect.
Take the pressure off of Washington.
I think
Yes.
the other thing is the two-way conversion is still out to bid.
Yeah. No, the two-way conversion they're doing. The Main Street, the pedestrian improvement project from 5th to 10th, the engineer's estimate, I believe, was $3 to $5 million. It's being handled by ODOT through their, do they call it a procurement office, Scott? Okay. And it's being handled by ODOT, and the bids are opened on October 20th. So we'll know who the bidder is then and what the bid amount is. And then that project will be underway, and they said that they will get that done before the bridge reopens.
And that's the sidewalks?
It's
sidewalks, streetlights, some street tree changes. Remember the 7th and Railroad, 7th Street. There's
intersection improvements, intersection improvements, just like at the bottom of the hill.
Okay, I just assumed it started because some of the corners are already taken out.
That's the two-way conversion.
Okay.
Yeah, but they've been same design engineer. They just had to piece that apart because it was different funding mechanisms, and
Yeah.
so.
And they wanted to get the two-way street opened right away. And one thing of note is that they want to make sure that everybody is aware. So banners have been ordered saying, I don't remember exactly what they say, but two-way Main Street, fall 2011, and they're going to be hanging, I believe, two of the overhead banners, and they're going to be installing the banners along Main Street. So they're blue with a two-way traffic sign on them, two-way Main Street. So get the word out, I guess, is
How's the
what they
parking
want to
going to be
do.
in that? Excuse me.
Parking?
Yeah, it used to be parallel parking
Still,
when it was two-way.
yeah, I
What's
think
it gonna be?
they're still going to be allow for some parallel parking on Main Street.
Is it parallel or is it going to be diagonal, parking on the other side of the street?
No, it's all parallel.
Oh, okay.
So when is the two-way they're estimating that'll be done this month or next month?
I don't know that, Blaine.
Soon.
I'm not. Yeah, it's like I said, it's part of this first phase project, and I think most of what they're trying to do is concentrate on those intersection improvements. I don't have a good sense of the timing of that
before
project.
Thanksgiving. I think everything's supposed to be wrapped up before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
I didn't ask enough details about those projects.
What was the work project on Lynn Avenue? I kept seeing signs, road work, 1010 to 1020, but I never saw anything
Right.
on Lynn Avenue.
So that's the Oregon City roadway reconstruction projects. We're really just doing originally the thought was we were going to dig a lot of that when we did the water line work down Lynn Avenue. So same area you were talking about, somewhat between 5th and Pearl,
Okay.
and actually it's between. There's 4th Avenue comes in there, so that's kind of the upper limits of that, and the lower end is near Jackson. So when we did the water line work, we did all the water line work, and then we required that contractor to mill a full lane width and pay back, but that was all in the downhill lane. So the uphill lane is showing some real signs of fatigue, so we're going to do something similar. Originally, the plan was to dig it out, and so there was some concerns about weather. So if we had to dig all that out and do it in between rainstorms, there was some real challenges about how we would do that. Obviously, our our summer weather has come to an end a little quicker than we would have liked. And so because of that, some of that work is delayed. But we also learned something about the structural section of that roadway there that was positive, and that we originally thought we were going to have to dig it all out. Now we've decided to change the scope of work to include more of a milling project where we mill down 4 or 5 inches of asphalt and then pave that back. And so I think that one's yet to happen this month.
Okay. Thank you.
I think, unless you have other questions on construction projects.
Any
can
other
move on.
questions?
I see the signs are up from Molalla Avenue. Work on that.
Yeah, it's all a challenge with weather. My sense is kind of like what we got into with Lynn Avenue is we could probably do some of the structural dig outs and do some of the repairs along there, but the intent is to do travel lane milling and paving as well, and to do that in rainy, cold weather for a thin overlay is probably not the right thing to do. So we may just go in and do the patchwork, the dig outs, and wait till warmer spring and try and extend that contract so that we can get those projects done in weather that's a little more appropriate for paving.
Very good. Anything else? Okay, so were these packets ours, or do we know about these packets?
These are from
What are
the
in these
TSP, the Metro TSP meeting that we went to on Monday.
Right.
So they had a whole bunch of them there. I thought, well, I'll grab them and
Excellent.
All right.
you know,
Thank
so
you.
some good information.
Thank you.
Yeah, Blaine, I hadn't thought of it. Blaine walked up and says, "Can we take those to our TAC membership?" And I thought, wow, what a great idea, because they did have a lot of good information about TSPs. The whole meeting was about, actually, surprised. So all of you got an email kind of announcement of that presentation, and Laura Butler, the gal who presented on our TSP last month, and myself were there, and Blaine was there, and then Nancy happened to be. They had 4 panelists, and Nancy happened to be one of them. We didn't even really I didn't know it. So they basically had Metro presenting their theories on how to do a transportation system plan update properly, and then they'd go through pretty much each section of what would be expected from a transportation system plan update. Pedestrian access, biking, signalization,
Transit,
maintenance,
industrial.
yeah, high capacity. So they went through each section. Metro presented, and then they opened it up to the panelists to comment on those presentations. And it was a pretty, I thought it was pretty excellent format, and very informative. And I learned a few things. So it was good stuff. Carl, help me out, Springer from DKS and Associates, who's the project manager for our transportation system plan update, was also one of the panelists. And I thought he did an outstanding, I don't know what you thought, Blaine, but I thought he did an outstanding job of bringing up concerns. He's got years of transportation system plans, and so he's, and you can just see the progression. Everybody in the room seemed to recognize that had been doing this for a while, that transportation system plans, they're getting keener and keener with how to deal with the issues about moving multimodal, whether it be a pedestrian or a bicyclist or a high-speed capacity transit or a vehicle. They're weighting all of those with various degrees of weighting of importance. And so, yes, it was good presentation, and I didn't read the material, but I looked through it, and it should be good stuff.
It was interesting. 'Cause I went to an investment conference in Denver Thursday through Saturday, and it was a company that buys warehouses from the manufacturing to the retail. there are usually 4 times the product of any kind have to sit somewhere and be distributed. And so they're all concerned about railways and transit. And it was fascinating to listen, and then to have that meeting, and you hear them say that, well, we have to admit, the whole industrial part is really kind of the low priority. But on the map that they showed at this investment conference, it showed all the main routes in the cities, and Portland was called a sub-city. It was just a small, but part of that I think is geographical. But I think that part of it is important for attracting businesses to our areas, how these transportation systems all fit together, and
Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to the TAC. Is there something we can help you with?
Is this a meeting of the Transportation Advisory Committee?
It is.
I thought several members of the Barker Hills Neighborhood Association were coming.
We did have Mr. Wright, Don Wright came.
Yes. Oh, what time?
The meeting started at 6 o'clock, ma'am.
Oh, that's the mistake. He said 7.
Ah.
So they've already left?
Mr. Wright was the only one that came, and he has left, yes.
And so that meeting is over?
Well, we're just wrapping up that meeting. If you were here to talk about the Barkley Hills Drive, Molalla Avenue area.
Yes, my name is Edith Racine, and I was on the on the committee, traffic committee, concerning that intersection.
Well, at this point in time, we don't really have an update on that intersection. What we have done is taken that to an engineering group to have them look at it and come back and give us recommendations for what can be done. So it's still being reviewed. We don't have an answer yet.
So that discussion is over?
Well, the discussion hasn't happened yet. Is all we were able to tell Mr. Wright is that the experts haven't gotten back to us with a recommendation.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry I missed the main discussion.
Well, thank you for coming down.
Go ahead. So, this is our packet. It's here.
Oh, yes, this is what I
She's the woman who wrote the list.
the letter.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. This is hers. So.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else?
I've got kind of a question. I think I brought it up a long time ago, but what do we do about, like, I first think of Partlow and Central Point. You come out in Partlow and Central Point, and you want to turn either left or right, either one. You look to your left to turn either direction, and you can't see very well because there's brush in the way or branches. And the same way with my problem that I brought up over in Leland and, gosh, help me up, McCourt. There's those trees, people got some rhododendrons, I think, that you can't see if you're coming into town on Leland and going to turn left on McCourt. But anyway, it would seem like that there would be some place that the police, all the different, your organization, whoever else, fire department, reports that we got clearance problems we can't see, and then somebody like yourself or whoever, I mean just your department, whoever it might be, will look into it, maybe it'd be people that, I can't even think of the word.
Isn't it that code enforcement?
Court enforcement to go tell these people they got to trim their trees back or something. Because there's really several places in the city that, that one there, the people, you got a line, stop line, and they go 10 feet past it so they can see. You can't get mad at them because they can't see what they're looking at,
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of thing. It's kind of a little bit like the other end of the building, the news section. You go up to that and turn right. The guy comes up there and turn left or something in the way, and I can't even picture it right now, but they pull in front of you so far that clear across the walkway that you can't see to turn right. But I mean, it's just a little, that's not a brush situation. But there's a lot of little places in the city that got brush hanging over that it's not the code, I wouldn't think. And it seemed like it'd be nice if the police, they got to see it. And your guys driving around all over the place, they got to see it. And one place they report everything too. It doesn't have to be formal. Just write a little email, say, "Hey, corner of Partlow and Central Point, bad brush," or
Right.
whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's something to be get done with or.
Yeah, so I would say we don't have an active program that goes out and kind of monitors all those
Well,
areas.
it's not monitoring. It's just when they're out, when you're working. Say you're driving to a project and you
Right.
see it and you can't see.
I think
You just write, jot it down, and you email somebody.
Yeah, and we do a lot of that, Ron. That particular intersection at Central Point and Partlow, I know. Really, last spring we spent some time on that corner, kind of clearing that out, making sure that was done, and we talked to code enforcement about it. The other intersection at McCord and Leland.
Yeah.
Last week I sent an email to the county transportation engineer because that's county jurisdiction right there, and our code enforcement won't enforce on that corner property. They did some plantings right there on the corner that really make that dangerous right there, and so it is one of those things that myself and I know my street supervisor and crew leader keep a closer eye on. The guys that are driving around, to be quite honest with you, are usually hopefully pretty focused on the job that they've been assigned as opposed to but I think that they're good about reporting that stuff too. So
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I told you my two pet peeves, which you know about.
the other thing is that we now have our citizen CRM through our website. You can, especially if you're smartphone savvy, you can actually take pictures of things and send us to us with a real quick response that we get those emails. They come to us right away, and it's really a matter of, it's kind of like with code enforcement and these sidewalk issues. There's so many areas with vegetation issues. We try and stay on top of those, but as a TAC member, you can easily you can send me an email, you can place a phone call. I'll take a note of those two locations right now again just to make sure we're looking at those. But it's really about keeping the community engaged as our active eyes and ears, because the street department's a department of 6 right now, and we're all looking. I find myself all the time, I'm either, depending on what happens to be on my mind, is it street trees, is it banners, is it striping, is it pavement condition? And so, you're driving down and usually you're focused on one of those topics, not all of them. So I can drive by and not be focused on brush, but pretty focused on striping. And so, I think those are areas where I think the community can be our eyes and ears and report those things to us. And we're trying to be pretty proactive about getting to them. So that's my recommendation.
Okay.
Yes, we will.
Anything else? Then we are adjourned. We'll see you back next month.